So welcome everybody to today's expert interview, and we have the lovely dietitian and diabetes educator Kim Connolly with us today to share her wisdom and words of wisdom. And just as a little bit of an introduction, so Kim has a really interesting pathway to this profession of dietetics, not probably very unique. Coming from the Air Force as an officer in the Air Force. So I'm sure some amazing stories. But I recently met Kim at the Low Carb conference in the Gold Coast, and we shared a room and shared lots of common stories about clients and that sort of thing. And that's why I thought it would be fantastic to have her come and join us and share some bits and bobs about her interest areas. So she's really been focused on diabetes and weight loss and all of that sort of stuff, but has a real interest in the brain and how that all ties into nutrition, as well as some autoimmune stuff as well. So I'm looking forward to hearing all about this side of things. So welcome, Kim, and you can tell us, maybe fill in a few gaps there and tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Vicky, for that very lovely introduction. I suppose there's a couple of things that I'm interested in from my dietetic perspective. Firstly, as you know, I do some podcasting as well, so interested in sharing what I learn along the way with others. And I suppose I should mention too that most of my work is in private practice too, so it's dealing with people one-to-one, and yes, some of the biggest issues, as you would be well aware, are getting body weight off, and understanding body weight, and understanding the emotional roller coaster that goes with the ups and downs of body weight. And I suppose my passion really is to understand this phenomenon that only appears to really affect the human race. So it doesn't appear to affect the animal kingdom. So we have to sort of step back and work out what we're doing that's so different, that's allowing our body not to maintain a healthy weight all by itself. So yeah, lots of interest in that, and I'll be the first to put my hand up and say I don't have all the answers, but I'm very curious about them. So yeah, thanks for having me along, and I look forward to having a bit of a chat with you tonight.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I will definitely put links to Kim's website as well as her podcast underneath this, so you can check that all out. And she puts out a new podcast every Monday, and the name of that podcast is Women's Mind Body Health. So you can definitely go and check that out. And her website is dietitiandownunder.com. So talking about changes that are good and that happen for people, one of the most common comments that I get is very, very quickly people start feeling less bloated, and they feel more comfortable in their gut and lighter. And that's sort of a common theme. But it's not everybody. There are some people who continue to feel bloated and to continue to have gut disturbances, and maybe they're getting results in other ways, and that's the reason why they keep pushing through. But there is definitely a certain population who's continue to have gut-related issues when following low carb. And this brings me to FODMAPs. And I'd love for you to chat a little bit further, explain what FODMAPs is, and this is something that you could draw people's attention to, some specific foods that might be causing some issues that still fit under this low carb umbrella, but could potentially be just making that little bit of a difference for them.
Yeah, certainly. So FODMAPs is an interesting area of research, and a FODMAP is a sugar. So it stands for fructose oligosaccharide. So that's where the FOD of FODMAP comes in. And they're the simple sugars that we eat as a part of everyday foods. And the FODMAPs are broken down into 5 different groups. which I think one of them's actually joined together now, but they are the fructose. So that's the group that's common in fruit. That's the sugar. And I should also just mention, if it finishes in an OSE, then it's a sugar. And then, so the next group is the lactose group. So that's the milk and dairy, which many people who tend to get into this insulin resistance sort of space, I find that, and I guess it's probably because the general population can end up being lactose intolerant, but this group in particular tends to have quite a bit of trouble with lactose as well. So that's the sugar, natural sugar in milk. And then we've got the galacto-oligosaccharides, the GOS. And I think that's the group that's been joined together with fructans. So these are the sugars that are common in, GOS are the sugars that are common in the legume family. So that's your kidney beans and chickpeas and lentils and baked beans, that sort of thing. And then you've got the fructans, and that tends to be the sugar in wheat as well as in rye. And also it's the sugar that's in garlic and onions. So, so if we are looking at these groups, and oh, sorry, there's one more, the polyols, and that's the natural sugar that's in things like mushrooms and avocado and cauliflower, but is also the sugar alcohol. So that's your artificial sweeteners that are used in the chewing gum and also in the soft diet, soft drinks and things. So all of these sugars are not broken down very well in certain populations of people. And it's not necessarily every one of those groups. It might just be one of those groups that people have trouble with. But what happens is, if you don't break that sugar down into its simplest form and then absorb it across the gut lining, then that sugar travels down to the large bowel, where the bacteria figure it's just takeaway down here and have a field day with it. And so they can break it down and they start to eat it and ferment it, just like bacteria do when they're fermenting yogurt or anything else that you leave out that starts to go off. So the fermentation process is a natural one, but it produces gas. And as a result, our bellies blow up. So the FODMAPs is a way of classifying these different foods into particular sugar groups, because you may have trouble with lactose, but you may be fine with fructose. And the FODMAP elimination diet is simply a trial of taking all of those food groups out and then adding them back one at a time to see if a particular type of sugar is the one that you're having trouble with. And that's probably a combination of your own ability to break it down and the type of bacteria that you've got in your gut. Because the ones you feed are the ones that are going to get car parking space down there, because it's a very intensely populated area and it's all about competition. So different species, if you feed them, are going to take up more space than other species. And there's it's such a huge area of that we don't understand yet, this pet we have down there called our microbiome, which is just a whole lot of different species, a whole ecology of species that are cohabitating together in our gut. And so, yes, if you feed them some of these sugars, then some of them are going to create more gas for you than others. So the FODMAP program was developed by Sue Shepherd from Victoria, Monash University in Victoria, because she had like an uncontrolled irritable bowel, and so she got into research, and she was and still is a dietitian. And from Monash Uni, they actually developed the FODMAP evidence, and they continue to work on that, and foods continue to get added and subtracted from those groups, and it continues to be pruned into something that appears to give people good information. And the best way, if you think that's you and you need to sort of have a look at that, the best tool for understanding FODMAPs is actually the Monash University app, which you can get on your smartphone or on your smart device. And it's a brilliant little tool because it operates like a traffic light system, and it breaks foods down into different categories. So it looks at all the fruits, it looks at the vegetables, it looks at the breads and cereals, etc., etc. And if you open up, for example, the fruit as part of that app, it'll list for you the fruits in alphabetical order. So you might select an avocado, which is obviously in the A's at the top of the fruit list, and it will come up with red, green, or yellow for and I think it lists it as four different sugar groups there, and it comes up red as a whole avocado for polyols because that's rich in polyols, but it's green for fructose and lactose and whatever that last group is, which I can't remember right now. And then it
oligosaccharides.
Yeah, is it? Thank you. That's right. I knew one of them was combined. And so then you might have a look at half an avocado, and it might be yellow for half an avocado. And then you might go down a little bit further and it says, right, quarter of an avocado, and it's green. So it gives you an idea of which sugar you're likely to have problems with, and also what volume of that, because it is all about a threshold amount. So you might be able to feed that little microbiome a small amount of avocado and get no response. But if you then went on to have mushrooms and cauliflower, which are both polyols as well, then adding all three together, you might all of a sudden go, why could I have avocado yesterday, but today I can't, I've got the same amount and I can't have it. And so it's understanding that all of the polyols in your dietary intake are adding a threshold, and at some point you might get a response. So yeah, the diet for FODMAPs it's never meant to be a long-term diet. It's simply meant to identify which of those groups is causing you problems, and that allows you a level of some control over that by manipulating your diet to remove the lactose or to not have polyols very frequently. So it's a very useful tool, and some of those foods, well, the first thing is that all of those foods are carbohydrates to some extent because they're all sugars. So you eliminate many of them on a low carb diet, and for some people that's enough. They come to you with IBS and they've got these other things which suggest they've got insulin resistance as well. And you go, well, you know what, I think it's probably more the insulin resistance that's causing these secondary effects, because if you're insulin resistant, you don't get rid of sugar very well out of your gut either. All of the cells geared to it are not working very effectively. So you end up with extra sugar in your gut anyway. So once you go low carb, for many people, that's all you have to do because it removes a lot of those undigested sugars. But for some people, and we don't know why yet anyway, there might be some of these groups which they're just not very tolerant of. And you can then use the FODMAP app or a book, that there is a book as well, just to identify which group you might be more sensitive to and to work out at what threshold you are sensitive to it. And then I would also say that if you've got other stresses in your life, it puts your gut under challenge, and you might normally tolerate quarter of an avocado, but if something's stressing you out, then you may not even tolerate that. So just being aware that stress plays a role, and it certainly does affect the microbes in your gut. Stress hormones do have an impact on them. So yeah, just being aware of all of that. FODMAPs is another layer. If you find that just going low carb isn't enough, then you can look at the FODMAP app or the FODMAP book and just identify what those food groups are. And then you might like to take whatever ones are still in your diet out for a period of time. And that period of time typically is 4 to 6 weeks, and then start to reintroduce them back a little bit at a time and one group at a time, just to see where your threshold is. the other place to get recipes for FODMAPs I noticed is on taste.com. So they've actually got FODMAP friendly recipes. So if you're looking for ideas, then online is a good place to have a look for FODMAP friendly recipes. And just being aware too that FODMAPs was developed in Australia. So we're actually the leaders in understanding and producing resources at the moment in this area. So it's sort of taken off a little bit in the US, I believe, but it's much bigger here in Australia than it is anywhere else.
Yeah, wow, that's a heap of information and really well presented. You know, it's sometimes a really hard thing for people to get their head around this whole concept, but it's great. You know, you pointed out this is not meant to be a long-term thing. So people think, oh my God, I can't do this for the rest of my life. And it's not at all that you need to do this for the rest of your life. It's just a method of identifying things that could potentially be causing problems. And what a lot of people have often found is prior to following a low-carb diet, their gut bacteria and their microbiome is in such a disarray, you know, that they can't tolerate a lot of the FODMAPs. They do low carb for a period of time, clean things up, gut bacteria improve, and then all of a sudden they're not reacting to the same degree with those FODMAPs. So, you know, we can definitely see improvements through low carb, but there might be a period of time that your threshold for tolerance is still quite low. And in order to feel comfortable, you need to make those modifications initially, and then you might be gradually able to add things back in higher amounts. So it's definitely another tool that you can have there in your pocket to try and work things out for yourself, and not too scary with all these resources that Monash has developed for us to use.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with you there. I would say that over time there's potential for improvement, and I guess it's a bit like the weight loss, isn't it? As things heal and get better and more efficient, you just tolerate more. So yeah, just being aware that you might need to increase that challenge as time goes on, and just see whether you still remain sensitive or whether things are getting better.
Yeah, definitely.
So much we don't know, isn't there?
Oh, so much. We're all still learning.
Yes.